CBS News, former President Donald Trump has been indicted on federal charges for his handling of classified documents. On his Truth Social account Thursday night, Mr. Trump says he has been told to appear in federal court in Miami on Tuesday afternoon. So what does this mean for the former president's future and his plans to be reelected for U.S. president? Joining us live with some answers is Oakland University political science professor David Dulio. Thank you for coming on to WWJ.
Thanks for having me, Ryan.
CBS had the headline, and this is how they open their news report, may not be a surprise, but it may be a shock. For you, was this a surprise?
Well, I think, we can look at what's transpired over the last year or so around this investigation and could probably see something like this coming. Surprise, no, but I think shock is fair, right? I mean, it's another in the litany of historic firsts that we've seen in Donald Trump's time in public life and politics, certainly fitting all three categories of the good, the bad, and the ugly.
We've seen politicians, former presidents, holding on to classified materials maybe they didn't know they had. How is what's happening now different with Donald Trump? Why did it rise, do you think, to the level of an indictment?
So that's really the interesting part of all this, right? And we don't know enough about that, I don't think, to draw any conclusions. But you've already started to see Donald Trump do this in the wake of his announcement of the indictment. We've seen it in his statements in the past, pointing to others who have had classified documents in their possession when they probably shouldn't have. And including Joe Biden, and even some of the documents that he had or which were discovered at his offices or homes were from his time in the Senate. And Trump is going to use this as a club to beat up on everybody he can find, right? From the current president to the FBI to the Justice Department, anybody he can hit, he's going to try to do so. And I think that's just going to help him in his campaign for the GOP nomination.
So what do you think happens next in this situation? They say that on Tuesday afternoon, at least he says he's going to appear at a federal court. In a process like this, what happens next?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not an attorney, so we'd have to find one of those folks to tell us about the specific processes. But I imagine he will be make this appearance and then leave, and then the long legal battle will commence.
Normally when you see legal battles, politicians step aside. That it seems pretty typical. But in this case, it doesn't look like there's any stepping aside that could happen. It seems pretty unprecedented what we're seeing, not only with the indictment, but continuing to run a presidential campaign on top of that.
Certainly at the presidential level. We have seen a number of candidates in legal jeopardy under investigation. There's a member of the Senate right now, Bob Menendez from New Jersey, long been investigated by different branches of the different branches of government, and has managed to stay in office and keep it up. It's certainly a first at the presidential level.
Joining us here, Oakland University political science professor David Dulio. Have you thought about how you're going to teach this in your class? Much in the same way that any topic about Donald Trump is handled, right? I mean, it's carefully and considerately, but honestly, right? And then I think that's really the only fair way to do it. Do you think it's going to be easier to look back at this, historically speaking, and try to digest what happened? Because when you're in the moment of big breaking news events like this, there's a lot of things that may get reported that may not be true. Sometimes you have to let the dust settle. Do you think maybe in the future the retrospect of this will look a little bit more tame, or do you think it still will be as wild as we see it today?
Well, I would say two things about that, Ryan, and I think you make an outstanding point that let's let the dust settle. I think the surprise and shock of this and the swirl around it for the next certainly couple days, maybe even weeks, may get a sort of lather everybody up. But let's let it play out. Let's see what happens, and let's let history be the judge.
As you heard on CBS News, former President Donald Trump indicted on federal charges for his handling of classified documents. Joining us here to discuss, Oakland University political science professor David Giulio. Thank you so much for coming on to WWJ.
My pleasure. Thanks again for having me.
And I'm sure we'll hear more from CBS throughout the night into tomorrow as well. And who knows, we may even get another message on Truth Social from the former President Donald Trump in all of this. Quite wild indeed. WWJ News Time is 9:08. Coming up in 2 minutes after traffic and weather.